Welcome back. Time for a little haggis. Anyway, in this episode, we got power back. We've been fiddling around with the turbo, we've been fiddling around with the hubs, we've been fiddling around with the cooling system and found all manner of bodges on this engine, mainly around the breathers and so forth, but enjoy. If you like it, does help the channel, does help the algorithms. If you don't enjoy it and you can't turn it off, give me a thumbs down. If you want to comment, down below. You need to be on your computer to comment, I'm afraid. If you want to email me, churchhouseclassics, it's all one word, @gmail.com. I do respond. I respond to every single email, but it does take me a couple of days sometimes because otherwise I just spend half a day on the computer. And I want to spend half a day doing this stuff. If you want to support the channel or buy merch, then there's a PayPal me link thing down here. The merch is in the description, or go to the video I put about new unit and merch update a few days ago. There you go. Enjoy the video. So, right, been over the interior here with the angle grinder. That little fella down there. Wear a face mask on these things because when these things start to wear out, and they do quite quickly, then they start to fling little bits of wire all over the place. You don't want one of those little bastards hitting you in the face. You really don't. Right, having been over it all now, I've taken the white plugs out that the side trim attaches onto. We have got a number of little holes in. This is the top of the sill, so the sill section runs up to about here and into there. That is actually hidden by the tread plate anyway, but I'm inclined to see if we can get some of these holes plugged in. Closer to the front we get, the more the devastation is, and it's not devastating. I've seen far worse than this. Let me balance the camera in here and go down. Battery knows it's cold today, folks. I've got a cold, it's just cold. Putting the kettle on. Right, so effectively what we've got is this would have been the original kind of line for the bolt-in gearbox tunnel cover. You can see up here it's rotted through that and along that edge there. Underneath here, that bit there, that's a bracket that goes on the bottom of the bulkhead that the brake lines and so forth connect to, which is why I've jacked it up. Now what I propose to do really is to cut it like that, like that, like that, like that, and just weld straight along there, butt it up to the side of the bulkhead, and just do a butt weld along there and get that whole section repaired, if that makes sense. Some of, like I say, some of these little holes, like these fellas here, I'll just be able to fill those with weld. I've got some Dynax. I shall spray the Dynax down inside the sills. We can go through these access holes here. These little white plugs, the screws go into those for the sill cover plates. Now obviously I have done a fair amount of stripping out. Before I do weld here, I will go underneath the car and just double check there's nothing underneath here that's likely to cause me a problem when I start to weld. You can see here, this is actually underneath here, this is the blank plate for the front edge of the sill. In fact, you can see it just there, that's the edge of it, that's the top edge of it. So when I cut this back, the edge of the sill is okay, largely, although there's a little bit there that's going to need cutting out and patching in. But on the whole, it's actually not bad. Now, interestingly, there ain't that many spot welds along that edge there. So when this piece was put in, when this relief piece was put in, it doesn't look like they actually did any welding to it. I'm just using a screwdriver here to prise it up. This stuff, that's a sound deadening panel, a bit like a Dynax sheet. It's also down here. This stuff burns beautifully. So when you're welding, keep the welder away from it. It's also really good at rusting underneath. So what I tend to do is chip away at the edges. And if I find rust underneath the edge, as I did down here, in this bit, can you see that bit down there? No, you can't. In this bit down here, I chip that away and manage to clean back the rust there. You can see there's a big hole there as well. But overall, it's not actually that bad. It really isn't. It really is not. So we'll do this side first, and then I will, once I've done this side, and I'm going to paint the whole thing, I'll use the FE123 rust treatment, and I'll put an epoxy primer over the inside of it, which is going to protect it from rotting from the inside out, because I think a lot of this around here, this is all rot from the inside out. Well, the matting, certainly this down here, that's rotted from the inside out, where the underfelt has got dirty or wet and it just soaked in. Right, a quick update. Cut all of the rot out up there, along there. I'm just working now on this piece down here, which is kind of over the top of the sill. Get that cut out and I'll be happy. Trouble is, it's just above that hole there is where you access the bolts for the body mounting. So I'm going to kind of weld a piece in there. What I tend to do is to cut it along the top of the edge of the sill and then drill the pot rivets out, like I have done here with this piece. It gives me something to work towards. When it comes to fixing this lot up, I'm going to go from there to there and fill that whole piece in with one chunk of steel. Then I'll do that piece, and then I'll do this piece. I might have to do that separate. Otherwise, I'm just going to end up like kind of with so much wastage on the steel. It's ridiculous. Gives you a rough idea of what I'm up to, though, doesn't it? I slowly work my way back. So the idea, I want to get this lot boxed in first of all. What I do recommend, my top tip for the day, fire blankets. These are the sort of domestic fire blanket things you get. They're marvellous at protecting things from grinder sparks. You can see there's a fair number of grinder sparks up here, even though I've been really careful not to direct any grinder sparks anywhere inside the car. But you'd be amazed how far they bounce, where they go to. So that's my top tip for the day. If you can't remove the interior, get yourself some fire blankets. I've got a giant one down in Devon I use, but I was only able to get some sort of, I don't know, what are they? They're about a metre by ish. There you go. Right, it's starting to cool down as well. That fella there, by the way, is the great one. I'm going to replace that, which is a good job because I managed to slice through it as I was cutting this weld up here. But I'm going to replace this piece. The actual chassis line is in really good order. I'll have to have a look at that. I'll draw a conclusion when I get to that point. I don't know yet. And again, it looks dramatic, but I tell you what, this car is. It's not bad at all. It really isn't. I've been underneath and looked at the sills. I'll show you in a minute. Sills are just like brand new. The actual underside of the sills. All of this corrosion here is because water's been trapped underneath the sound deadening material. And as you can see, the paint that Land Rover put on the interior of the car here, I've been out and looked at mine. Mine's exactly the same. It's just like a very, very, very thin primer. And I probably could go through it. Oh, it might be an epoxy. I'm going to paint all of this, by the way, the whole floor. I'm going to paint with a grey epoxy paint to protect it really from rotting from the inside out again. Because if we can do that, we are a step ahead, aren't we, really? I think, anyway. Pulling apart the wiring, first and foremost, there's oil dripping out of the turbo, so I think the turbo's definitely fucked. The intercooler is absolutely full of oil, as is the pipe that goes in between the two. I have just been undoing the kind of the second battery connector. Now what they've basically done is they've put a power post down here, which I'm going to just lose the whole thing, and I'm going to replace it with a proper connector that goes to alternator and starter. I don't know whether this is standard or not. I don't think so, because that looks like the standard. It might be standard. I don't know. I'll have to have a look, because I've not done a VM engine car before, so it could well be that it's standard. Just don't know. Just don't know. Anyway, the panhard rod that I'm about to put on here, the right-hand drive bracket, came with a complete panhard rod, as you see. Ha! Polybushed. That's a Brucey, isn't it? That is a definite bonus, that. So I'm just about to bolt this all up and get the axle secured again. As you can see, I've got two panhard rods. I've got the original panhard rod for the car, which is rubber bushed, and I've got the new one, which is polybushed. So I think that's a definite good freebie. And I just started to clear this crap from up here, on this side of the engine bay, ready to drop the steering box into place. But it looks like all this power and stuff is going to have to come out of the way first of all. Just really to give me the access, I'm going to have to get rid of the steering pipes. Now, bearing in mind the steering box goes more or less exactly where those pipes are located, I don't know what the installation is for a right-hand drive power steering pump on one of these things. It could well be that the pump is moved to a completely different fucking location. We'll find out. As it stands at the moment, it can't stay where it is because the power steering box needs to go there. In fact, I'm not even convinced that the alternator's not going to be in the way. But we will find out. There'll be a way around it because they do right-hand drive VM engined Range Rovers. But it's not something I'd kind of anticipated when I first looked at this. But yeah, we'll get it all apart and work out what's going on. Inside the turbo, there we are. That's the shaft at the end of the turbo that wiggles. Still no power, as you can see. It's fun. Don't want to give me power? Don't give me power. I don't mind. I can work without power until Glenn, not Glenn, until Freudian slip, until Julian can sort me out with my own dedicated power. The irony is, the fucking power that I have been using, the cable runs along my side of the fence. Bollocks. It is a load of bollocks, it really is. Right, okay. I'm likely to get this intercooler out actually, but it's only the 4 bolts on the top here, and I should be able to lift the intercooler out. The oil cooler there all looks okay, and I think that all of this mess down here is actually intercooler rather than oil cooler. You can see down here, it's just like a massive gloopy mess. So I'll get the intercooler out, tip the oil out of it, but let's get the other bits and bobs sorted out first of all. Another wee bodge. So up here, there was a piece of pipe wrapped around this kind of overflow expansion pipe, and a Jubilee clip around that. A fucking hole in it. I mean, honestly. Look, that is completely rotten, that. Just snap it off. There we go, snapped off. I shall remake that pipe out of a bit of 10mm copper. It's not really a problem. It can stay like that for the time being. But yes, another bodge. Only a wee one though. I mean, cars at this age, they're going to be bodged. They're going to be bodges on them from time to time. So far, so good. Okay, pulled all the coolant hoses off. This, by the way, is the coolant. There's not a lot of antifreeze in that, so yeah, I've drained it down. There's probably still coolant in the block, but you can see in here it's not been using antifreeze, it's just full of sludge. So I'm going to have to back flush this somehow, which probably means the thermostat needs to come out in order to back flush it in order to get rid of all the rusty sludge. Viscous fan, cannot get the bastard off. So I'm going to, I mean, you can see I've been working with the Stilton and banging that. I'm going to get some heat involved in that. I discovered, sorry folks, I do learn things every single day. This car is designed to have dual batteries, dual charge. All of these, where the fuck they've gone, these things, these are to do with the tow bar electric, so don't need those, but what I will need to do is to wire the 2 batteries in. Good job I haven't pulled all the cabling out, isn't it, eh? There's an awful lot of mess on these chassis rails, which I will get sorted out. Interesting observations. First of all, fuel pump is not connected. That's the fuel pump there, mechanical fuel pump. So there must be an electric pump down there somewhere. I'll double check on that, find out where that is and why that's been disabled. If there's an electric pump it's working, I'm inclined to leave it in place. If it's a cheapo electric pump though, it might not be the best. That's the intercooler for the turbo. Now, yes, I was right. All of that oil on the front end is coming out of the intercooler, largely because the bottom pipe wasn't very tight. So you can see there, all of that is evidence that it's oil from the turbo that has created all this mess and not the oil cooler. So the oil cooler can go straight back in. The turbo itself, yeah, I mean, like I've said a number of times, let me get my lamp. We are getting electricity soon, right folks? We can press not on that. In the meantime, I've got these floodlights. You can see here, everything around the turbo is just doused in oil. It's not a good place to be. And when there's oil dripping out of the hose or out of the pipe that goes to the intercooler, this one here, that normally indicates that the seals inside the turbo are fucked. And I think the play on the shaft as well is an indicator of that. So I need to get that off. I'm going to get it refurbed rather than replaced because they ain't cheap. Now, on to my favourite observation of the day. While I was underneath the car, down here, I was looking at the diff casing and thinking, God, that's dirty. And then looked at the front of the sump. What's that pipe hanging in there? It can't be. Really? Tell you what it is. So the breather is just breathing into the open world. I don't know why. I think that's particularly naughty. I can't see that passing an MOT. So I'm going to have to work out why the breathers, well, what the breather system should be on these VM engines, and why it's been disconnected. But typically, on the petrol engines, the breather goes back in through the inlet. But it depends whether this is positive or whatever crank. It all depends on the crankcase pressure. I don't want to be fucking around with it. Those are the oil cooler pipes there, by the way, which I've just tucked. That's the reason I tucked them under there, actually, just to keep them out of the way. I found that the power steering pump down here has a different bracket for left-hand drive and right-hand drive. So I've ordered a right-hand drive bracket. There was one on eBay yesterday. That's on its way. Silly things. So here we've got another coolant pipe which goes round to, I don't think this is a silly one actually, Richard. This is not a silly one. This is the heater pipe. So we need to replace, I think we're going to replace all of the hoses and things on this car. None of them are in particularly good order. These are so we've got, let's stand you up. This is the bottom hose. Listen. It's not good, is it? I think it's, they're past it. So I'm going to order new hoses. Carreras. I've obviously got a problem with the expansion bottle. That has been leakage-ing. It's pretty much the colour of the coolant as well, rusty water. If you guys have ever had a chicken farm, you'll know all about rusty water. Oh yes, that was gross, Richard. Utterly gross. Right, so I'll need to find out where the fuel pump is, and just make sure it's not a cheapo kind of electric pump. If it is, then while we got this far, I shall aim to reinstate the mechanical pump. I don't know why it's been taken off. Chances are it's just the diaphragm inside that's failed, but it all looks fairly serviceable. I forgot to mention on the last video, by the way, the kilometres. It works out nearly 200,000 miles. So I think 100,000 kilometres is about 60-something miles. So what are we, 61? So we're in the region of 180 to 200,000 miles on this thing, which is possible, I suppose. That's done 208 now. But yeah, I think I'm going to replace all the drive belts as well. These drive belts are all utterly shagged. I think this thing has missed a few services, and it's also been in a very, very hot climate. So we'll replace the drive belts, work out what's wrong with the breather, probably check to see if there's even a thermostat in there. It may not be, I don't know. So this bracket, which the alternator sits on there, and the power steering pump adjustment bolt is there, I think this bracket is kind of the same throughout the range. However, this plate on the front of the power steering pump, I think that is different. I've got another one coming in. This plate here. I've got another one coming in, so I need to undo these 3 bolts here, take the pulley off, and then I'll replace that plate. But before I go anywhere, I've got a new complete pump arriving, along with all the bits and bobs. So I'll see where that goes first and foremost. Engine was full of very clear water. very clear. But very obviously no antifreeze in there whatsoever. Alternator's okay, it's up there. I haven't checked the output on the alternator yet. I think the next job is going to be, let's drop the steering box in. I need to refurb both steering arms, which are over here. All the ball joints are shot. Before I put the steering box in, I'll double check the drop arm ball joint, because they're easier to replace when the drop arm's off the car. Turbo was a bit of a bastard to remove. I'll tell you one thing though, we're going to reduce the number of oil leaks on this thing dramatically. The oil filter wasn't tight at all. In fact, looking at it, you can see someone's had a good old go at getting it off it before. So I think for some reason it's been taken off. And then I think the reason it was taken off is because someone's also had the turbo off. Because the bracket that holds it onto the engine block wasn't attached, and all the fixings were loose on it. However, that said, the turbo is not well. Let's just see if we can get a view into. Let's go out here. Let's go down here. There we are. Balance you like that. Can you see into the turbo? I think you can. I don't know if you can see that amount of movement there. I can push the fins right the way to the housing on one side and then to the other. And this is a KKK turbo, whatever that is. But it needs a rebuild. I'm going to find someone that can rebuild that for me. There it is. Completius. An unwell turbo. And that's the oil drain that goes back to the sump, and that wasn't tight either. So none of the fixings on the turbo were tight, and nor was the what have I done with the lamp? There's the lamp. And nor was the oil filter. So like I say, I think someone's been at it before, and the whole of this side of the engine is just cakes in oil because nothing was tight. Anyway, enough of that bollocks. There's quite a lot of soot on the inside of this exhaust as well. But then it's a diesel, isn't it? What are you expecting, Richard? What are you expecting? What are you expecting? Right, okay, onwards. Well, first and foremost, we've got power. Secondly, I've been welding, so tidied up some of the welds around the top of the footwell here, so that light is causing a flicker. Tidied up some of the welds around the top of the footwell here, and then started working on this area, the top of the sill and the floor area. If you remember rightly, there was a hole about there, and to be honest, most of it was just so thin and crispy. When I went over it with Mr. Tappy, it was just all falling apart. It's rotted from the inside out, not from the outside in. Similarly, with this sill panel, you can see largely the paint is intact on the inside of it. You can see where I welded a patch on there, and I just started blowing hole after hole after hole through it. And this stuff down here is rotted from the inside. Sorry, it's rotted from the car side, from the carpet downwards. So I thought, well, rather than messing around with it, just cut it off. Let's do it properly. So I'm just going to put a big piece of steel in there, and I'm going to put a little fillet in there. Yes, I'm almost out of cutting discs as well, which is a pain in the arse. Thousands down in Devon. I need to get my arse sorted out, don't I? Really? Don't I? Yes I do. Right, okie dokie. So this steel here is not particularly thick, so I'm imagining something like that will do it. Even enough on the edge to put a little lip on for the door seal to go onto. I think it'll work. The main structure of the sill is actually on the inside section. The outside section is a lot thinner. As you can see, you can move it. The inside section you can't. Yeah. Let me get all these bits tidied up, weld those on, and then I am more or less at that point done with the driver's side. Everything else in here I'm happy with. I've ordered the paint and the rust treatment to get it sorted out. I've been over it and just filled any of the missed slots. So although I'll seam seal on the other side, just want to make sure that I've not introduced any new holes. And because it's butt welded, you can see it's nice clean joint along the wheel arch side. Again, seam sealer will be order of the day. yesterday, because I had no power, today I've got power. Yesterday I was fiddling around, so I built up the near side hub. That's all done and dusted, ready for new CV joint to go in. And then I've got new discs as well coming, so that can all go together. And that's then near side finished. Steering box, the one I got from Mr. Hammond, I think there's just a bit too much fluid coming out the bottom end of this thing for me to even think about it. It was dirt cheap. It was damn sight cheaper than the surcharge, so it's worthwhile because I'll just use it as a exchange unit on the new one. Turbo is going off today to Midland Turbos, recommended to me by one of the motorsport guys around the corner. Deals with a lot of high-end stuff. He said no, they're very, very good. And they've quoted it's a Borg Warner turbo. It says KKK on it, but it says Borg Warner apparently. Yes, they can refurb that. Yeah, so I think today really I want to get this side finished and start on that side. I'm going to have to go and get some more cutting discs. Once this side's done, I can put pedal box in. Oh yes, start actually moving this thing forwards. Well, not literally, these side steps need to come off, but I've not got round to that yet. Okay, so we've got zinc primer on here now. What I did is I just welded a little lip in along the edge of the sill. That's all wet with primer at the moment, but that's all ready now to drop in and weld into place. And then apart from a couple of red dots over here you can see where I managed to see daylight through, that then is this side done. I've got the paint which should be arriving today, however I expect it isn't, so I'm going to crack on with the other side and get the welding finished on this. Went over the rest of it, really kind of just knocking it with the persuader, and it was only really these bits up here that were anywhere near kind of rusty. The rest is will flap back. It's not really an issue at all. It's all looking very good. Happy with it. Right. That's all right, isn't it? I think so. I like this welder. Still sluggy, but you know, nice bit of kit that. Belongs to my mate Paul. I don't leave it in the unit overnight, chaps, just in case anyone's wondering. And on this side we need to start over here now. So Mr. Sappy's been out and about. I'm pretty sure that area up there, just going to cut that out, just weld a piece in. Most of it is okay. I'm going to take the footrest off. We don't need a footrest on this side. Over here, however, it's looking a bit more desperate. Now, this end, all the way down here, I'm fairly sure, apart from that hole there, this is in better condition than it was on the other side. You can see I had to weld a fair amount of steel along the edge of the sill over there. And that was largely because it had rotted from the inside out. Now on this side we're seeing nowhere near the level of corrosion. But anyway, what I do, I use the wire cut brush to get this stuff off. I mean, okay, a blowtorch will do it, but that's just fire, isn't it? So a wire cut brush just gets this off where I need it. So where I'm going to weld a square in there, I don't want any of this shit anywhere near there. The undersill is very, very flammable on this thing. So I weld for like 10 seconds, which is why I've got lots of slugs, and then go underneath and slap the flame. Up here, that's going to be a little bit trickier up there to do that one. Now that we've got the pedal box out, I'm going to have to zip tie those up at the top, because if I slam the door on those connectors I'm going to break them. Up at the top, what we basically got here is there's a bloody great lump of body sealant that has been wedged in here by factory, and in all honesty it's that that's causing a problem. Let's just get all these bits up here and out of the way. But you can see that damage there goes along quite a long way. You can push that through there. It really is quite a nasty bit of corrosion there. Get rid of the fuel pump, sorry, the fuel filter. That can go. Very cack-handed today, Richard, as usual. Right, so really what I'm going to need to do, I think, is just chip all of this sound deadening away and then see what's going on underneath. Because even there, that's wet under there. This is where kind of seam sealant doesn't really do what it's supposed to do. When it comes to painting the floors, what I do is I use the epoxy paint to paint it first of all. If I can here, you can see sand and mud. So the car's done very, very, very brief amount of kind of messing around. I think someone's been not on the beach. I don't think, but someone's been in a river. Nowhere near as bad as other cars that I've seen or worked with. So all of this inner wing, this is all really good. Happy with this, just this trailing edge down here. Now, wings are not removable on these. The inner wings, you have to cut them off, and there's no way am I cutting it off. So what we might end up doing in here is welding a big plate on the inside up here. And once it's painted, use a body sealer to protect it. That'll work, won't it? This, by the way, this black tube here, that's for the heater. So we'll wrap him up and out of the way. I'll get all of the cables out of the way and just use a zip tie and tie them up here somewhere. Just so they're up and off the floor and out of the way. Yeah, I think so. Right, let's get busy with Mr. Tappy and see where it takes us. What I might do on this side, which I didn't do on the other side, is take the step off first, actually. The reason being is I can actually get access to the floor without actually kind of, you know, getting on the floor and underneath when it comes to welding, because I just want to be banging flames out before they take effect. We don't want any of that shit going on, really, do we? No, Richard, we don't. Sun's out. The sun is very, very, very bright. That's nice. This I noticed the other day. So this is just a standard deck panel. Exactly the same as the deck panels I've got. But what they've basically done is, because the new cover infringes on this space here, they've just bashed the corner over. I don't think this is not a home bodge. This is a factory bodge. So they fit it, whack the corner over, both sides. How weird's that? Never mind, it happens. Right, okay, in fact I can just pull that pipe through. So that's through, that's out of the way. Yeah, we're going to need to do that. I'm going to get the side step off as well. So I'm going to crack on doing all of that stuff and keeping myself really busy. Might have a quick sweep up down here of all of the rust. That's the rust pile there on the driver's side. A fair amount of it. That's all the shite I managed to cut off. And all of the grit and came out of the underside of the car. Now I know I've got the exposed swivel ball over there, but that's just literally in place. I can pull that off for now a bit later on. That looks better, doesn't it? What do you reckon? I think it looks shitloads better. Absolutely shitloads better. Right, okay, we're having a bit of a probe around up here. And basically what's happened is moisture has got underneath the seam sealer and then rotted it out. Now the inner wing is okay. The bulkhead needs a bit of a plate welding on it. It's not an issue. So mindful of that, I thought I'd dig out on this side and see what was going on. The seam sealant is all just completely solidified. There's nothing soft about it. But underneath, bare metal. So when you get the seam sealer off, it's just bare steel. So it looks like they, when at the factory, it looks like they seam sealed and then painted with a primer and so forth. It's kind of a bit of a back to front way of doing it, but never mind. They didn't want to make the cars last forever, did they? I didn't actually get round to doing any welding on that side yet. I've really have just been, you can see the extent of the hole along the bulkhead there. That was just very, very light probing. So while all the dash and everything's out, it just makes sense. It's so much easier to do that while that's there. Right, packing up because it's fucking freezing. Not a little bit freezing, very freezing.